Okay, so like when we think about, the foundations of Western civilization,
Yeah.
right? Concepts like democracy and reason, they kind of immediately spring to mind. But where did these revolutionary ideas first, like really take root and flourish? Today, we're diving deep, right, into the world of ancient Greek city-states.
Yeah. Really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And we've got some rich material to work with
Ah,
here. So, um,
looking forward to it.
yeah, me too. So I guess our mission today is to really try to understand, right, the structure of these ancient
Structure.
polis,
Yeah.
how they were governed and the cultures, right, that developed within them. We'll be looking at how they were organized politically, economically, and culturally.
Absolutely. And I think, for our listeners who are always eager to gain knowledge efficiently, we've really, tried to extract the most crucial information from these sources.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So to kick things off, I think we should probably start with the idea of the polis itself. It's more than just a city, right?
Yeah, it's really a combined entity. It's not just the urban center, right, with the houses and the temples,
Right.
but it also includes the surrounding countryside. They're not separate spheres. They're really interdependent parts of a whole. People lived in the city, but they worked the land outside the city.
Makes sense, yeah. So this combined urban and rural entity, it served a few really crucial functions, didn't it? We
Mhm.
we identified four key roles that the polis played.
Absolutely. First and foremost, it was a military and defensive unit,
Yep.
protecting its citizens and territory.
Right. That's essential in the ancient world, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Secondly, it was an economic center, a hub for trade and commerce. We see marketplaces mentioned, where goods were exchanged, things like bread, olives, wine, even decorated pottery.
I can almost imagine like the bustling marketplace, right?
Yeah.
All the noise and the bartering going on.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So that's two pretty big ones already. And then the third function we talked about was political and administrative. So this is where decisions were made.
Right, the nerve center.
Yeah. And leaders, right. Sometimes they're referred to as like wise men
Yeah.
in our sources.
Mm.
They would govern the affairs of the polis. This was, the seat of power.
Absolutely. And then finally, really importantly, the polis was a religious center, often marked by significant temples,
Yeah.
the Parthenon in Athens.
Right, which is a great example.
Yeah, a magnificent stone structure.
Mm.
Really stands in contrast to, the simpler dwellings found in other parts of Europe at the time.
Right, which I guess speaks to their level of development.
Absolutely.
Right. So now that we have a better understanding of what the polis was, let's talk about, how these polis were organized. And particularly when it comes to governance, they weren't uniform, were they?
No, there were different systems of rule that emerged. And it's really interesting to see this kind of political experimentation that was happening in the Greek world.
Yeah, it really is.
So we see three main types of government. First, we have aristocracy,
Oh,
which literally means government of the best.
government of the best.
Okay, but in practice, this meant rule by elite families.
Right. So kind of like a hereditary ruling class.
Yeah, exactly. And their power was rooted in their noble birth, their lineage, and often, the extensive landholdings that they possessed.
I mean, it suggests a certain stability, right, with that lineage. But
Yeah.
I guess also the risk of rule that prioritizes the interests of a select few.
Absolutely, a potential downside for sure.
Yeah. Then we have, of course, the famous example of direct democracy in Athens.
Yes, a groundbreaking concept
Yeah.
where male citizens had the direct right to participate in shaping policy.
Which is so different from, the aristocracy that we were just talking about.
Absolutely. And we even see mention in the materials ostracism, the Schweingerecht,
Right.
where citizens could actually vote to exile individuals
Wow.
if they deemed them too powerful or dangerous to the state.
So it's like a safeguard against tyranny, right?
Precisely.
Yeah. Fascinating. And then the third key form of government that we see is tyranny,
Right.
which is ruled by a single individual,
Hmm.
but someone who typically seizes power. It's not, a legitimate.
It's not hereditary. It's not elected.
Right.
It's often, comes about during times of upheaval, social or political upheaval.
Interesting. So you have this whole range, right, of political models coexisting.
Within these relatively small geographic areas.
It's pretty amazing.
Absolutely.
So these city-states, they weren't they weren't just isolated entities, right? They
Yeah.
actually expanded their influence.
Yeah, they did. And a major driver for this expansion was overpopulation within the polis. They needed more resources, more land. So they started establishing colonies throughout the Mediterranean
Interesting.
and even into the Black Sea region.
Okay, so this outward movement, it played a role in spreading Greek culture then.
Absolutely. It was a major factor.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then we get to the 5th century BCE,
Yeah.
right? And this marks a real high point, doesn't it, in their cultural development?
Absolutely. This period, often called the Classical Age,
The classical age.
we see this huge surge in creativity, particularly in architecture and sculpture.
Right, and this is where the Parthenon
Yeah.
that we mentioned earlier.
Exactly. Stands as a testament to their
All
brilliance.
their architectural skills, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think this investment, right, in these kinds of monumental buildings and artistic expression, it really reflects a society with considerable resources and a strong sense of civic pride.
Yeah, yeah, a true golden age in a lot of ways
Absolutely.
for the Palais. But of course, the story takes a bit of a turn as we move forward in time.
Yeah.
And the Greek city-states, they start to experience some internal weakening.
Yeah, we see these internal conflicts, the underling stride, as it's referred to in some of the sources,
Right.
these rivalries between the various police. They really start to erode their collective strength.
Okay. So, all these wars, the shifting alliances, I guess it creates vulnerability, right?
Absolutely. Vulnerability that external powers could exploit.
Right. And that's where Philippus II of Macedon comes in.
Exactly.
A figure who definitely had ambitions.
Huge ambitions, yeah. He comes to the throne of Macedon in 359 BCE, and he was someone who had a deep admiration for Greek culture.
Hmm. Okay.
Particularly, the military prowess of Sparta. But his real goal, his overarching goal, was to unify the Greek city-states.
Which is a pretty big goal.
Absolutely. But he ultimately achieves this. He defeats the combined forces of Thebes and Athens.
Wow. And then he establishes the Corinthian League,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
So this is a step towards unification, but it had certain conditions, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah. It's a really interesting step. The Greek police, they join this Corinthian League and they acknowledge Macedonian leadership, but they technically retain their political independence.
So it's not a complete takeover.
No, not quite. Although Sparta, interestingly, refuses to join.
Ah,
Uh.
okay. Of course, Sparta. Always has to be a little different.
Yeah.
So Philippus, he's now poised to launch a major campaign against Persia, right?
He is, but his assassination in 336 BCE really changes everything.
It really changes the course of history.
Yeah, and paves the way for his son,
Alexander the Great.
Alexander the Great, exactly.
And I mean, this is a name, right, that's synonymous with conquest.
Absolutely. And I think it's worth noting, he had this incredible education.
Right. He was tutored by Aristotle, wasn't he?
By Aristotle himself. Yeah. So following his father's assassination, he inherits this unified Greece.
Right.
And launches this unprecedented military expedition in 334 BCE and conquers, vast swaths of territory, including the Persian Empire.
All in a remarkably short time.
Yeah, I mean, he dies at the age of 33.
Right.
So really, his reign was brief.
But impactful.
Extremely impactful, yeah.
And his conquests led to this widespread cultural phenomenon that we call Hellenism, right?
Exactly.
So what exactly did that entail?
Well, at its core, Hellenism was Alexander's policy of spreading Greek culture throughout his empire.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about military dominance. He really wanted to Hellenize, the conquered territories, introduce Greek language, customs, philosophy, art.
So a real conscious effort to spread Greek influence.
Absolutely. And he had some really specific strategies for achieving this.
Like what?
Well, he encouraged the migration of Greeks to Persia, established Greek communities in these new lands, and then Greek became the official language, right, of administration, of science, commerce, the military. They even, had language instruction organized for Persians.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. He also integrated Persian soldiers into his armies.
Yeah.
Trained them in Greek military tactics.
So it's a real blend then of military traditions.
Exactly. And then we see, this promotion of intermarriage.
Right.
Which is really fascinating.
Yeah, I remember reading about that.
So Alexander himself, he marries Roxanne, a Bactrian princess,
Okay.
and he actively encourages intermarriage between his soldiers, Macedonian and Greek, and Persian women.
So the idea was to kind of forge social bonds and encourage cultural exchange.
Precisely. And then, of course, all the cities that he founded, many of them named Alexandria.
Right, right.
These cities, they really become these melting pots.
Yeah.
Mixed populations of Greeks and local inhabitants,
Hmm.
and they served as centers for trade and learning.
Real centers of Hellenistic culture.
Absolutely.
And to facilitate all this trade, across this huge empire,
Right.
Alexandria introduced a unified currency.
Exactly. Based on the Attic standard, Athenian standard.
Makes sense.
Streamlines things.
Yeah. And even after Alexander's death, right, and the fragmentation of his empire, this Hellenistic influence,
Yeah.
it persisted, didn't
It
it?
did, yeah. After his death, his empire was divided among his generals, the Diadochi,
To Diadochi, right.
and they established their own Hellenistic kingdoms.
Okay.
So the political unity was gone,
Right.
but the cultural impact of Hellenism, that really endured
For centuries even.
for centuries. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see this really interesting kind of synthesis of Greek and local traditions.
In art, philosophy, religion.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's really quite a legacy.
Yeah.
So to bring it all together, right, we started with this idea of the Greek polis, its unique structure, its many functions, from military defense to, religious significance.
Absolutely.
We looked at the various systems of government, from aristocracy to, Athenian democracy, which was groundbreaking for its time.
And even tyranny, which emerged in certain circumstances.
Right. We talked about, the remarkable cultural achievements of the classical age.
The Parthenon, for example.
Right, exactly. And then, we sort of traced this process of the weakening of the
The
polis,
internal conflicts.
right, the internal conflicts, then their incorporation under Macedonian rule,
And then, of course, the spread of Greek culture through Alexander's conquests.
leading to this Hellenistic world. And it's really amazing how these ancient societies, they laid the groundwork for so much of Western civilization.
Yeah, I mean, they really provide a framework for understanding so many of the complexities, right, of governance and culture and just societal development, even today.
Absolutely. And it makes me wonder, like, how might this balance, right, this delicate balance between the autonomy of these individual city-states,
Which they valued so much.
they did, and then the need for larger political cohesion, right?
Which they also struggled with.
Right. How might that echo the tensions and challenges that we see in our own world today?
In our interconnected world, yeah.
Something to think about.
A lot to ponder.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive today. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment.
Thanks for
Everyone,
listening.
and welcome back for another deep dive.
Mm.
When we think about empires like Rome,
Mm-hmm.
we often picture them at their peak.
Right.
Huge territories, powerful armies. But how do they actually get there?
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're going to go all the way back to the very beginning
Okay.
to trace the evolution of governance in Rome from its earliest days as just a small collection of settlements all the way to the rise of its monumental empire.
I like it. Yeah.
We have some really great sources for this one, too.
Yeah.
Looking at the stages of Roman rule, and we even have a really interesting video transcript that actually shows the key moments in their journey to becoming a huge power.
It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, and our aim for today is to really understand
Okay.
the critical changes in Rome's government, and hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a really clear understanding of this incredible historical process.
Sounds good.
All right, so let's jump right in. We were talking way back around 800 BCE.
Wow.
What did the Italian peninsula even look like back then?
It's hard to imagine, isn't it? Well, the sources we have show that there were just a bunch of settlements scattered along the Tiber River.
Okay.
And what's interesting is that Rome's location actually gave it some natural advantages.
Like what?
Well, it had fertile land, good for farming, and it was in a strategic position for trade. And as these settlements started to grow and merge, we see the very beginnings of a unified city.
Okay, so these early settlers, they had to figure out some way to govern themselves.
They did.
What did that look like?
Well, the very first form of government was a monarchy,
Okay, a monarchy.
which means they had a king as the central authority figure.
Okay, so one person in charge.
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And tradition says there were actually 7 kings in total.
7 kings.
Wow.
I know it's a lot,
That's
right?
a lot.
But the last one, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, His reign was really important.
Oh, really? How come?
Well, he reigned from 534 to 509 BCE, and he was actually kicked out.
He was kicked out.
Yeah, he was forced out of power, and this is a major turning point for Rome.
Oh, yeah. The sources we have suggest that his rule became pretty tyrannical.
Okay.
He was kind of abusing his power, and so the people, they had enough.
Wow.
And after they overthrew him, they made a decision that would shape their future.
What was that?
They vowed never to have a king again.
They were just done with kings.
Done with kings, that's right.
So this, dislike for kings, it became like a core part of who they were from that point on.
Absolutely.
And so after they rejected the idea of a king, they came up with something new.
They did around 500 DCE. The Republic was born.
The Republic.
Yep. And the Latin term for that is res publica, which literally translates to public affair or commonwealth.
The Commonwealth, so it was like a shared thing.
Exactly. It signified a huge shift in how they thought about power.
Okay.
It wasn't about one single ruler anymore. It belonged to the citizens.
At least in theory.
Well, yeah, in theory.
So how did this Republic actually work in practice?
Okay, so the Republic had three main parts.
Okay.
First, you have the Senate. Yeah, and this was made up of wealthy and influential families, the
The
patricians.
patricians.
Yeah, the aristocracy, basically.
Okay.
And at first, their role was mostly to advise the magistrates.
Okay.
But over time, their power and influence grew like crazy.
So they had a lot of control.
Yeah, they pretty much dictated policy.
Wow.
And not surprisingly, their decisions often benefited them the most.
Well, that makes sense.
Right, so even though the idea was to have more people involved,
Yeah.
there was still this imbalance of power from the very beginning.
So it wasn't a perfect system.
No system is perfect,
That's true.
but it was a start.
So we have the Senate, and they're advising these magistrates.
Yes.
And who are these magistrates exactly?
The most important ones were the two consuls.
Two consuls.
Yeah.
Okay.
And these guys were elected every year,
Every year.
and they had a lot of power.
What kind of power?
Well, they could propose new laws,
Mhm.
they commanded the armies,
Okay.
and here's the really important part. Each consul could veto the other one's decisions.
So they kept each other in check.
Exactly. It was a system of checks and balances.
Okay.
Plus, they
Yeah.
could only serve for 1 year.
So no one could get too powerful.
Exactly. They learned their lesson from the whole king situation.
Right. They were trying to prevent another tyrant.
Exactly.
Right.
That makes sense. And then the third part of this republic puzzle is the People's Assembly.
Okay, the People's Assembly. So this is where the regular people come in.
Right. In the beginning, they didn't have a ton of power.
Okay.
They were more of an advisory body
Okay.
made up of both patricians and plebeians,
Audience.
the common citizens.
Okay.
But over time, the plebeians, they fought for more rights and more political power.
They wanted us to think.
Exactly.
Good for them.
And they got it. Eventually, the People's Assembly gained the power to make decisions about war and peace.
Wow. Okay.
And they could even vote on laws that the Senate proposed.
So the plebeians, they really gained a lot of influence.
They did. It shows how the power dynamics were constantly evolving within the Republic.
It sounds like it wasn't always easy, though.
Oh, definitely. There was always tension between different groups vying for power.
So how did this republic eventually become an empire?
Well, things started to unravel during a period of intense civil wars.
Civil wars.
Yeah, Rome was fighting itself.
Wow.
And all this conflict created a lot of instability within the Republic.
Great.
And here's the thing, these crises often gave ambitious individuals the chance to step in.
Oh, I see. So they took advantage of the chaos.
Exactly. They promised to restore order and bring stability.
Makes sense.
But often in doing so, they actually ended up weakening the very principles of the Republic.
Wow. So it's kind of a cycle, you know?
It is a cycle.
A cycle of power and ambition.
Exactly. And one of the most famous examples of this is Julius Caesar.
Julius Caesar.
Yeah, he was a brilliant military leader,
Yeah.
a smart politician, and extremely ambitious.
Yeah.
He won many victories on the battlefield, and he used his political skills to gain a ton of power and influence. And get this, he started taking on titles and honors that were very similar to those of a king.
But they hated kings.
I know, right? But he was basically acting like a king, even though he didn't officially have the title.
Wow. So the fear of monarchy wasn't enough to stop him.
Not quite.
So what happened to him?
Well, Julius Caesar was assassinated in 44 BCE.
He was assassinated.
Yeah, and this event is generally seen as the end of the Roman Republic.
Oh, wow.
Although, to be fair, the transition to the empire wasn't instant.
So it took some time.
It did. There was still a lot of fighting and political maneuvering going on.
And that's where Octavian comes in, right?
Exactly. Octavian was Caesar's adopted son,
Okay.
and he was very clever.
What did he do?
Well, after Caesar's death, there was a power vacuum,
Right.
and Octavian, he managed to come out on top after a series of civil wars.
So he basically won the Game of Thrones.
You could say that.
Wow.
And the big turning point was around 27 BCE.
Okay.
What's fascinating is that Octavian presented himself as the restorer of the Republic.
Oh, really? So he was playing the game.
He was a master of the game. He kept the outward appearance of the Republic,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, he was gathering more and more power for himself.
He was pulling the strings.
Exactly.
So he basically became the new ruler.
He did, and he even took on a new title, Augustus,
Augustus.
which means the revered.
The revered?
It gave him this special status,
Okay.
elevated him above ordinary citizens,
Right.
and signaled that he had almost godlike authority.
Wow. So from being afraid of kings, they now have a revered ruler.
It's quite a shift, isn't it?
It is.
And his reign ushered in a period known as the Pax Romana,
Pax Romana.
which means Roman peace.
Okay.
It was a long time of stability and prosperity,
That's great.
and it really benefited trade and the well-being of people across the empire.
So things were pretty good under Augustus.
Yeah, for the most part.
Now, by this point, how big was the Roman Empire?
It was huge.
Huge.
By the time Augustus came to power, the Roman state had expanded way beyond its original borders. It had become a massive empire, or imperium.
Oh, yeah?
It covered the entire Italian peninsula.
Right.
They had defeated Carthage,
Wow.
conquered vast areas, including Macedonia and Greece.
So they were a force to be reckoned with.
Oh, absolutely. Rome was the dominant power in the Mediterranean.
Wow.
And all this territorial growth happened before the empire was officially established.
I see.
But it definitely set the stage for it.
So the Republic grew into an empire, and then Augustus just made it official.
Pretty much.
And with this massive empire, they had a new challenge.
What's that?
How do you control and manage such a vast and diverse territory?
That's a great question. And where Romanization comes in?
Romanization.
Yeah, basically it's the spread of Roman culture, language, laws, and customs throughout the entire empire.
So it wasn't just about military power, it was also about cultural influence.
Exactly. They wanted to make everyone feel like they were part of Rome.
That's interesting.
And what's even more fascinating is that the Romans themselves had been heavily influenced by Greek culture.
Oh, yeah, after they conquered Greece.
Exactly. So they had this blend of Roman and Greek elements.
Okay.
And this led to some amazing things in architecture, sculpture, religion.
They even adopted Greek gods, but gave them Roman names, right?
They did. And Latin, the Roman language, it became a unifying force across the empire.
So they created this shared identity.
Yeah, they were really good at it.
And of course, we can't forget about the Roman military.
Of course not.
They were the ones who made all this expansion possible.
True.
But the army itself, it went through some big changes during this time.
It did.
So in the beginning, the army was mostly made up of citizen farmers.
Right. They served because it was their duty.
Okay.
But as the Republic grew and the wars got longer and more frequent,
Huh.
they needed a more professional army.
Okay.
So they started recruiting volunteers.
Okay, so it was no longer just about civic duty.
Right. It became a career.
And these volunteer soldiers, they were loyal to their generals.
Very loyal.
And the generals would often reward them with land and other things.
Yeah, it created a strong bond between them.
Okay.
And this also increased the power of the generals.
I see.
So the military structure itself played a role in the shift away from the Republic.
Interesting how all these things are connected.
Yeah, it's all part of the story.
So we've seen this amazing journey from a tiny kingdom to a powerful republic,
Mm-hmm.
and then finally to an empire under Augustus.
It's an incredible transformation.
It is, and it makes you think about how other empires rose and fell.
It does, doesn't it?
Are there any patterns?
That's a good question.
What do you think?
Well, I think it's clear that ambition plays a huge role,
Definitely.
and military power,
Of course.
and the ability to influence culture.
Right, to shape people's beliefs and values.
Exactly. It's all connected.
To the story of Rome, it's not just ancient history.
No, it's a story about human nature
About the desire for power,
and the struggle for control.
it's a story that's still relevant today.
Absolutely.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the rise and transformation of governance in Rome.
I hope you enjoyed it.
Me too. It was a great discussion.
It was.
And if you found this exploration valuable and you want to explore more of these foundational shifts in history, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment with your thoughts and suggestions.
We love hearing from you.
We do. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the biggest underdog stories in history. How a small, persecuted religious movement did the unthinkable. It took on the Roman Empire and won. This is the story of how Christianity went from a hunted cult to the official religion of the most powerful empire on earth. Let's get into it.
So picture this. You're in the Roman Colosseum. It's the year 107. A Christian leader, a man named Ignatius, is about to be thrown to wild animals. And these are his words. He's not begging for his life. He's actually welcoming this brutal death. For the Romans watching, this made absolutely no sense. It was completely bizarre.
And that's really the question at the heart of all this, isn't it? What could possibly inspire someone to have that much conviction? A belief so powerful that you would willingly, even joyfully, face a gruesome public execution. If we want to understand how this faith conquered Rome, we first have to understand the mindset that fueled it.
All right, first up, thrown to the lions. To really get that conviction, we have to look at the brutal reality these people were up against. And that brings us right back to that man in the Colosseum, Ignatius. So, this is happening under Emperor Trajan, when Rome is at the absolute peak of its power. And for the Roman state, an execution like this wasn't just an execution, it was theater. It was a spectacle designed to send a crystal-clear, terrifying message to everyone watching. This is what happens when you defy us.
Now here's the thing you've got to understand. For the Romans, this wasn't really a religious disagreement. No, when Christians refused to make sacrifices to the Roman gods, and this is the big one, refused to worship the emperor himself as a divine being, that was seen as a direct attack on the Roman state. It was sedition, it was treason, and the punishment for that, a very, very brutal death.
So why was it treason? Well, it goes way deeper than just politics. We're talking about a head-on collision between two totally different ways of seeing the entire world.
I mean, just look at this breakdown. They could not be more different. Roman religion was all about the public, the political. You worship lots of gods, including the emperor, to show you're a good citizen and to keep the state secure. But Christianity? It was the exact opposite. It was about one God, and it wasn't for the state. It was about your personal salvation, a private journey between you and God.
And this wasn't just some abstract philosophical difference. It had huge, real-world consequences. If you're a Christian, you basically have to check out of public life, right? You're not going to the big pagan festivals. You can't join the army because you'd have to swear oaths to Roman gods. You can't hold public office. You were essentially living in a completely separate, parallel society.
Which brings us to this massive paradox. How on earth does a religion that makes you an outcast, a religion that could get you killed in the most horrific way, how does that not only survive but actually grow like crazy?
Well, the message itself was just incredibly powerful, especially if you were someone Roman society didn't really care about. This wasn't a religion for the elites. It was for everybody, the common person, women, even slaves. It gave them a dignity and a strong sense of community they couldn't find anywhere else. And maybe most important of all, it promised that all the suffering you endured in this life would be rewarded in the next.
And here's the real irony. The very tools that made Rome so mighty became the instruments for spreading this new faith. The Pax Romana, this long period of relative peace, made travel safe. And how did you travel? On the incredible network of Roman roads that crisscrossed the 2 million square mile empire. The empire's own infrastructure became a superhighway for the Christian message.
This brings us right back to Ignatius and the lions in the Colosseum. The Romans thought they were sending a warning. They thought they were stamping out a fire, but they were completely wrong. Their strategy backfired spectacularly. What they thought was a warning was actually an advertisement.
Yeah, this quote just says it all. The Romans couldn't wrap their heads around it. When the crowd saw these martyrs die, not with screams of terror, but with grace and even joy, it didn't scare them. It made them curious. It made them ask, what could someone believe in so strongly that they would face down lions for it? Every martyr became a missionary. Okay, so this brings us to the final, unbelievable twist in the story. The moment when this religion of the powerless and the persecuted suddenly gets its hands on the ultimate earthly power. And when the change came, it happened stunningly fast. In 313, Emperor Constantine legalizes Christianity, and just like that, the persecutions stop. But that was only the beginning. Less than 70 years later, Emperor Theodosius makes Christianity the official state religion, and by 392, he bans all the other old pagan religions. The game had completely changed. I mean, think about that.
In the span of a single human lifetime, the entire power structure of the empire flipped on its head. The religion that was once an enemy of the state was now the state. It's one of the most profound and rapid transformations in all of human history.
So after all that, what's the big takeaway from this incredible story? A story of conquest? Not with swords and armies, but with an idea.
The most crucial point is this: the religion that got its start by defining itself against the Roman state had now merged with it. The faith that offered comfort and meaning to the powerless was now wielding the ultimate power of the empire.
And that leaves us with a final, provocative thought. The triumph of Christianity in Rome reshaped the entire world, but it also fundamentally changed the religion itself. It raises a question that has echoed through the centuries ever since. What happens when a faith built on persecution becomes the authority? What is lost and what is gained?